All right. We are live. We are live. Greetings and welcome back once again. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna Yisrael. I'm sharing. If you're watching, feel free to share. I had to do a little sharing on this side. I did a little Facebook promo, but I did a little sharing. And so we are going to jump right into it. Thank you for those who have joined us. We're going to have this discussion. It is always a discussion. I share that my findings, and then you can definitely ask questions, share your thoughts, and we build and go from there. So without further ado, oh no, I can't present until I share my screen. Hold on. Let me share my screen. There should be a way to share your screen without going. All right. Here we are. Make sure everything is good. The name of it is Mind Your Business. We usually, like I said, have this discussion when it is negative. Someone is in your business and you're upset, or they're in your affairs and you don't need their input, usually what they're trying to give you. So it's they're trying to shop where they're not wanted, or offer goods and services or advice where they're not wanted. And we usually tell them mind your business, right? But in this case, we're looking at occupational, Torah laws, and biblical commerce. That's what we're going to be looking at here. All right, so if you have been listening along, if not, feel free to go back to the beginning. But first, I started off with the original sin. I just wanted to share that, the original sin, revisit the original sin, look at how covetousness or coveting, which is the 10th commandment, played into the transgression that ultimately Hawa or Eve and Adam transgressed in the garden. We also looked at the temptation of the serpent and whether or not he beguiled her and in what ways he beguiled her. We went through all of that. Not, I was edified. Hopefully you were edified. But as we continue, because we're still in Genesis 2 and 3, because there's just so much there. And everything, there's so much there. You can come from so many different angles. So in this angle, it's actually one of the first, before the coveting, before all of that, it was the occupation. So man was created to work. Genesis 2 and 5, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew, for the Most High had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. So it's giving the backdrop of what was happening. We know that vegetation came in day 4. So all of this stuff, the ground was pregnant, the earth was pregnant with seed, what they would call wild, what they call it, wild crafted. It was pregnant with seed, but it wasn't agriculture as we know today, where it's very where man's hands are involved, essentially, right? You have people going out getting wild crafted herbs, and then you have a place that's actually been tilled for a certain type of product, right? So the word till, it says till the ground, but the word till is abad. So this is where we see man associated with purpose and what man was created to do, which was to work or till the ground. The word is abad, okay? The ayin, the bait, the dalet. And it means, I gave you the Strong's Concordance number, it means to work in any simple implication, to serve, to till, causatively to enslave, bondage, be bondman, bond service, compel, do, to dress, to execute, and it goes on. This is interesting because the word can go 2 ways. It can be, as it's saying here, work in this case, or it can be forced servitude. But in any case, whether it is being willingly serving or forced to serve, it's still work. Okay, so keep that in mind as we're having this discussion. Finding purpose. In Genesis 2 and 15, and the Most High took the man and put him into the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it. This is 2 and 15. So this is another space, again, that's testifying that the job that man was created, Adam, man and male and female created he them. The job was to dress and to keep. So the word for dress, again, is that word abad. So it was translated to dress it, abad. It was translated earlier to till, and that word is also abad. Okay. Keep is shamar, which means to hedge about, that is to guard, generally to protect, like a farmer would protect his crop, to keep it, to dress it. So it's to work it and to keep it. Okay. That was Adam's first job description. Remember, we're talking about minding our business, and we're going to go on to learn what business is. Adam had a career at this time. Before the fall, Adam had a career with benefits. He had access to the Creator, hospitable work environment, and assistance, which is Eve, to complete his assignment. This is all the things he had. You know how you get a job and it's like, okay, what am I being paid? Oh, that's a sweet job. Getting paid this is a great. I got a corner office. You know, I get paid lunches. All of this stuff. He had a hospitable work environment. They had a hospitable work environment. Their animals were under their control. You know, they were able to ride them. You know what I mean? Nothing was coming at them. They didn't have no care in the world, nothing to worry about. It wasn't hard work. It was light work, as they would say. Genesis 2:8, and the Most High planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man whom he had formed. 2:9, and out of the ground made the Most High to grow every tree that is pleasant in the sight and good for food, and the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And 10, and a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into four. So I put those scriptures there so that we can see again, just as I described in today's terms, the career that he had, right, and his work environment. And this is why, you know, Genesis goes to lengths to describe where he was and what was going on, where they were, right? It was pleasant. It was beautiful. It was a lovely place to work. And that's what he was created to do, to work. Adam lost his career and got a job, okay? He lost the career and got a job. And so we see this is sometimes with people who have worked to the top of their ladder and do whatever it is they tried to do, and they get at the pinnacle of their career and they lost their career, and now they have to just do anything to survive. We saw job shaming. I think they called it job shaming when the what's his name again? I forgot his actual name, but he used to play on Huxtable as the daughter's husband. His name escapes me right now. I don't know why his name escapes me. But recently there was a whole issue about, you know, he didn't have any acting gigs, and he was working at Trader Joe's, and somebody recognized him working at Trader Joe's and tried to scandal him, tried to make it a scandal. And they tried to scandal him for working at Trader Joe's. He lost his career as an actor and he got a job. So that's kind of like a demotion in the eyes of many. But Genesis 3:17, and unto Adam, he said, because you have hearkened unto the voice, this is the creator, this is the judgment now. I didn't just want to go into the judgment because we spoke about the transgression, we spoke about the temptation, and usually people use the judgments to just, you know, beat people over the head. But I kind of wanted to look at the judgments in a different way and look at how it relates to today and see what are the things that we can do to what are the things we can do essentially. And unto Adam, he said, because you have hearkened unto the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat of it, curses the ground for your sake, in sorrow shall you eat of it all the days of your life. So again, Adam is being hit in his purpose, and his purpose has become harder. His work has become more difficult. Make bricks, you know what I'm saying, without straw type of stuff. So the ground is going to yield thorns and thistles shall it bring forth, and you shall eat the herb of the field. So the ground is going to be cursed, and he's going to be sorrowful for the work that he has to be putting in to be able to eat, to sustain. Because remember, before the trees were barren and he didn't have to put in much effort to eat. And so now they also had access to the tree of life, right? Which is often overshadowed by the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So when they lost access to the tree of life, it became a concern of staying alive. Genesis 3:19. In the sweat of your face shall you eat bread till you return unto the ground, for out of it were you taken, for dust you are, and unto dust you shall return. Okay, so it's pretty grim. It's like snatch your badge off, snatch away your corner office, snatch away your lunch pass, everything. Adam, and put you down in the mailroom. Adam got a transfer. Okay. Genesis 3:20. And Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. 21, and unto Adam also and to his wife did the Most High make coats of skin and clothe them. 3 and 22, and the Most High said, behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil. And now lest he put forth his hand and take of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore the Most High sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. So he got a transfer. He got kicked out. They got kicked out. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the garden Eden cherubims and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. It's like when they say she got fired, and some say she left when Omarosa left the White House, and everybody had the picture, of being, expelled. You give me a pass and pack up your bags and put your stuff in a box. You're out of here. So we can relate to having a good career or whatever it is, and then being kind of demoted. And this is what's happening in the judgment portion of the Genesis narrative. A new life. Man's future became uncertain depending on personal knowledge of environment for life, right? So he has to now depend on, he's in a new terrain. He's not really from there. You go to streets that you're not really from. You don't know nothing about. You were created outside of the garden, brought inside of the garden, and that's really all you know. So now that you're going outside into this strange environment, lions and tigers and bears, you know what I mean? Oh my. Effort was required to stay alive, as it is today. And that's one of the number one stresses when you look at stressing in society. It's about sustenance. How is one going to stay alive? What are you going to eat? Where are you going to live? These type of things are the number one stresses that we still face even on to this day. Effort was required to stay alive. A constant exchange was needed to produce and increase resources. So it's essentially seed planting, because we think about money as staying alive, but the very principle of it is this exchange, right? Something that's going to be bartered and exchanged, value for value. So a seed, you plant the seed, you guard it so that no other animals can come and eat it. You harvest it for food. You know what I'm saying? And that's the exchange. You give it to the ground gives you back in another form. You give it back to the ground gives it back to you in another form, right? So I'm going to continue. Hopefully, let me see if I can find the, oopsie. I don't see it on my phone. All right, I'll continue. Now we're up to Mind Your Business, Basic Bible Study for Spiritual Growth. This is not necessarily to feel good. This is the aha moments, put it down in your notebook, think about it, reflect on it. When we keep praying the same prayer, asking the same questions, crying about not understanding why, we may be erring in a very basic principle. And this is why we're not yielding the results that we're looking for. And instead of crying and whining and praying, we need to step back and bethink ourselves and really assess our environment and the things that we're doing and the things that we're not doing. Because sometimes we waste time, we mess around, we are not implementing the laws so that we can yield. And then at the same token, we're praying for the Most High for a miracle where we actually he has given us the instruction, he's left it on record for us to know what to do to get that which we're asking for, right? Commerce, an interchange of goods or commodities, especially on a large scale between different countries, foreign commerce, or between different parts of the same country, domestic commerce, trade, essentially business. An interchange of goods or commodities, okay? Business is the activity of making one's living or making money by producing or buying and selling products, such as goods and services. Simply put, it is an activity or, what's this here? This thing is blocking me here. Simply put, it is an activity or enterprise entered into for profit. That's business. Some people, especially in our community, because of the injury, and I've spoken about this, and I'll speak about at another time, our injury as descendants or those who have been exposed to the fallout of the transatlantic slave trade was injured in the space, many spaces, but one of the spaces is in business or commerce or worth of your produce. When we were forced, our foreparents were forced to produce without compensation, we were not in business, that we were robbed. Okay. And so because you were robbed of your labor, your efforts, your ideas, you see now so-called Black History Month is coming along. You're going to see a lot of people saying, having all of these lists of melanated people who invented all of these things, but never got credit for it, never got compensated for it, or was robbed through it. That is showing you where one of the trauma points is, which is in commerce. I've said it before, I'll say it again. One of the trauma points of the fallout of the transatlantic slave trade and everything that ensued thereafter is business. Whether or not we trust one another, whether or not we think that because our produce was not valued in the marketplace and we didn't benefit directly for the most part from it, then we began to think it's really not worth anything. So when we exchange one to another, this is also within the epigenetics of the people. We have to address this. To continue to ignore it and then cry about being scammed, to continue to ignore it, cry about business practices in the community makes no sense. It's redundancy. Employment. Employment is a relationship between two parties, usually based on a contract, where work is paid for, where one party, which may be a corporation, for-profit, not-for-profit organization, cooperative, or other entity, is the employer, and the other is the employee. Employees work in return for payment, which may be in the form of an hourly wage, by piecework, or an annual salary, depending on the type of work an employee does and or which sector she or he is working in. Okay, so these are definitions I got off of either Wikipedia or Webster. These are general definitions. So we weren't necessarily employed because you weren't getting paid. But we'll go back into that in a minute. Let me make sure and check everybody's good on the Facebook side before I continue here. Oopsie. Stop sharing my screen for un momento. Oopsie. Okay, so I just want to check, make sure everybody's good before we continue. That's just funny. That's just actually gonna go pick up my jerk chicken. He's still listening. It's cool. It's cool. It's cool. We're gonna go back now and continue with this discussion. Feel free to put any questions or comments you may have. Okay. Share screen. Share screen. All right. That's crazy. I don't know why it always does that. Like box. But anywho. Wrong one. Present. All right, we're back. Sorry about that, y'all. So we're gonna go on. Different types of employment in Torah. Remember, this is mind your business, basic biblical study for spiritual growth. Again, I just find it just weird how there's like 50 million and one videos about the second coming, polygyny, all of these things. And then when it gets into this area, it's kind of like quiet. It's kind of like crickets. It's kind of like you only hear about when somebody gets scammed. You don't really hear. I haven't, and I try to be fair when I'm saying this. You don't really hear or see much about the preventative measures, as well as how to properly and successfully doing it without tyranny. You know what I mean? And so again, without this aspect, how do you build without the agency to build? How do you build without economy? How do you build without produce? When you go to any country, or you look up any stat, because this is 2018 going 2019, you can look up the stats for any country. One of the things you're going to have to look at is the growth, the gross national product, right? As a matter of fact, before I continue, let's do that. Let's look up a country so that this is not theory. Let's look up a country right now. Hold on one second. Let's look up a country. Anybody have a suggestion of a country you want to look up? Let me see. Some just off country. Let me see. Let's look up. Hmm, uh, let me see. Let's look up Haiti. Gross domestic product is what I meant to say, right? Hold on. Haiti is the, if I'm not mistaken, poorest country, they say, in the Western Hemisphere. And that's another story. And I shared some about what happened to Haiti and why Haiti ended up in that position and how France, forced Haiti to pay them for their freedom because Haiti was the first country to be freed, or fight for their freedom and actually get it during slavery time. And France then, said that Haiti was indebted to them and ended up having to pay. But let me click on this here. Hold on one second. Oopsie. Let's go back. And then we're going to look at another country, right? So gross domestic product. That means when we're talking about business, mind your business, we're talking about growth. We're talking about looking at what does the country produce? What does the country let me let you guys see my screen here. This doesn't mean somebody is money grubbing, because when you look at, and I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but let's just look at Haiti, shall we? And then we'll look at another country. Oopsie. All right. Okay, Captain Obvious, please stop talking on the video. Okay, so I'm at trading economics right now. Can you see the screen? All right, cool. Haiti, GDP. Stands for gross domestic product. What does the country produce? Let me get this out of here. Hold on. What does the country produce? What do they export? What do they trade? So in the case of Haiti, it says it was worth $8.41 billion US in 2017. The GDP value of Haiti represents 0.1% of the world economy. GDP in Haiti averaged 5.06 billion from 1991 until 2017, reaching an all-time high of 8.7 billion in 2014 and a record low of 1.8 billion in 1993. Okay. So let me see what it is that they export. Let's see what Haiti exports. Hold on one second. So these are some of the numbers of other countries, but I want to see what Haiti exports. So let me look and see if I can go to a Wikipedia article and see what Haiti exports to be able to. No. Did you come on, crazy thing? What's wrong with you? All right. Let's see what we have here. It usually tells you somewhere along here. The GDP is 19.9 billion, they say. They give you the population. This is of a country, right? I'm trying to see what the product is, what's the export. Hold on. I'm doing this live, y'all, so please bear with me because we like to prove theories. It talks about the government, military, law enforcement, economy. Here we are. Economy. According to Wikipedia, it says, here we go. Proportional representation of Haiti's exports. Thank you for making my life easier. Okay. According to this, 40% is t-shirts. Now, I'm learning while I'm sharing because I didn't know that. 40% of Haiti's export is t-shirts. 29% is sweaters, pullovers, sweatshirts, etc. 10%, so basically clothing. Men's suits, not knit. 2.8% women's suits. Why did they make this thing so small? So all of this right here is clothing, essentially. Clothing. We have 0.4% coffee, and what's that? 1.4% cocoa, and only, is that 19? Dates, figs, pineapples. So a bit of produce and the rest is clothing. So let's read here. Haiti's purchasing power fell in 2010 per capita, despite having a viable tourist industry, which can also be considered income, right? Haiti is one of the world's poorest countries and the poorest in America's region, with poverty, corruption, We wanted to look at what their export and what they were producing. So we see the majority of their production, 40 plus 29 is 69%, plus another 10 is 79%, plus another 2 is 81%, and some of these smaller ones I can't see. So over 3/4 of their production is clothing. And I'm supposing that all of these green right here represent the clothing. So it looks like more of 90% of Haiti's export is in the clothing industry. And so unless Haiti grows the cotton or whatever the materials are for the clothing, it looks as though this material might be imported and then the clothing in turn be exported. This is important stuff when we're talking about minding your business and basic Bible study for spiritual growth. When we talk about nation building, you have to produce a something. If you're in a consumer nation, let me get another while we're still here, let me just go ahead and get another country. Let's see, another country. Let's go across the world. Dubai. Let's look at Dubai's economy. They claim, let's see here. Dubai's economy. One would say oil, right? And I think I got to get this plug for my computer. Climate, government, human rights, economy. One of the world's fastest growing economy. Their gross domestic product is projected at 107.1 billion, with a growth rate of 6.1 in 2014. Okay, so we see here, let's go here. The Emirates UAE total gas revenue is 2%. Dubai's oil reserves have diminished significantly and are expected to be exhausted in 20 years. So this non-renewable resource, they're not really producing. What they're doing is tapping the earth. And after that's gone, it's not like to say agriculture or something like that. Then if in 20 years that's going to be exhausted, therein lies a problem. So they say real estate is 22.6%, trade is 16%, 15% financial services, 11 are contributions to Dubai's economy. So and let's look at China, because China right now is leading economic, and China is one of the number one, if not number one, in producing a lot of the things that are going out into the world. Okay. Why am I saying all of this? Because when the Torah tells us about blessed you're going to be in the city and blessed you're going to be in the field, blessed when you come and when you go, it's speaking about economy. I remember one time somebody told me, show me economy in the Torah. I was like, wow, what are we teaching? Go ahead. What are we learning if somebody's going to ask the question to show me economy in the Torah? Who is teaching you and what are you reading? And again, I say that because we're injured in this space, we would rather pretend it doesn't exist. We feel uncomfortable talking about it. We would rather push it under the rug, but it affects us. It affects relationships, because if the man does not have the substance to be able to support his family, that puts stress on him. It in turn affects the relationship. It affects the children. It affects the upbringing. I'm just going to look at one more country and then we're going to go. What did I say? America was like 100 and something, 107 billion. Let's look at China. And then China's GDP is 14 trillion. Okay. China's beating, everybody's in the billion. Haiti, I believe they say is the lowest. And China's at 14 trillion. And I'm just doing this as I'm talking to give it some realistic bearing on the discussion. China had the largest economy in the world for most of the past 2,000 years, during which it's seen cycles of prosperity and decline. As of 2017, China has the world's second largest economy in terms of nominal GDP, totaling approximately 12.014 trillion, according to the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. In terms of purchasing power parity, China's economy is the largest in the world, with a 2014 PPP GDP of $17.632 trillion. Okay, what does China produce? We don't even got to go there because China produces almost anything. China produces almost anything, right? So I'm not even going to go all the way there. I just wanted to prove a point about having to be able to produce something, some things. And then, as we spoke about in business, it's talking about trading and commerce and goods and services. So let's continue. That was a little exciting field trip over there to Wikipedia land. So in the Torah, there's nothing much has changed except for our locations and the way in which we're being treated, right? But different types of employment in Torah. You had the bondwoman, classified as the Amma. Okay, that can be the maid servant. That can be, well, in this case, the maid servant, somebody who is indebted for a certain period of time. And we see it in Torah where we see Laban gave Bilhah and Zilpah to his daughters. We see that Hagar was a bondwoman or an Amma. We see her name escapes me, not Raquel, Ribqa's handmaiden, right? As well. She was a nurse, if I'm not mistaken. But hired servant is a sakir. This is what most of us do when we go and get jobs or even work at corporations and you say you have a career, you're a hired servant. You get paid for your time, you get paid for your energy, you get paid for showing up and doing your job. Nothing much has changed. Wet nurse, a yanak, a wet nurse, we see this in the case of Moshe or Moses. We see that it was said that when they floated Moshe on the ark, the miniature ark, and Pharaoh's daughter picked him up out of the water, and Miriam runs and says, I can get a wet nurse for you. I can get somebody to nurse him. Nursing a baby, that was a job description in antiquity. And it was one that paid. Okay. We have today something similar, more before it became modernized. You would see women nursing other women's children, but today we have what's known as a milk bank, where you can donate your breast milk if you have surplus to other mothers. So it's a wet nurse. Because you have the bottle, then the other baby is not directly on the mother's breast, but you are feeding children from someone else's milk. And then you have the bondsman or the servant. Remember this word. This is eved. It's the same root word of abad, which means to work. So this first word that we saw in the beginning, when Adam was made to till the soil, was abad. And the person or the bondsman or the servant is the eved. You just see a change in the root, but the essence of the word is the same. Let's continue. So we're going to describe a hireling, which I did, a little shakir, a man at wages by day or year. You know, if somebody, the day is a day laborer, the year is the individual who is hired onto the company, right? And so they give you a yearly salary, $39, $50, $60, $100,000 a year, right? As opposed to the person who's just going to work day to day. This all existed within the Torah. The servant or the bondman, eved, a servant, a bondman. Again, we just explained that. A yanak means to suck, causatively to give milk, which is a wet nurse. And then you have the amma, which is a maidservant or a female slave. This is all. And what we see a resurgence of this. If you look at like places like Dubai, places of the Middle East, where I was watching a few documentaries where there is an issue that is happening now in spaces like Kenya and Ethiopia and Nigeria, where you have agencies coming into the continent and setting up and telling them that, hey, I can get you work. If you go to Dubai, if you go to, United Arab Emirates, if you go to some of these other spaces, they can get you work as a ama, as a maid servant, right? And they will pay you. And what's actually happening in those spaces, the contracts are not being honored. When the women get there, their passports are being taken away, the communication is being taken away, and they're not being paid. So they essentially went there as not a slave, but as a maid servant or a nanny, and turned into a slave. So that's a problem that's happening right now. One's employment status depends on the verbal or contractual agreement met by responsible parties. So the situation I just told you about just now, again, the terms of agreement are being violated. But similar to today's employment environment, we see positions such as work for hire, project contract, temp to perm, day labor, hourly wage, or salaried employees. There's nothing new. There's nothing changed. I don't know why we think that, something magical has changed. Since the time immemorial, man has been made to work in different spaces. The only thing that has changed is what we value as work and what we do not value as work. I find it interesting that in antiquity, when the mother got married or the woman got married and she becomes a mother, the thought is you're going to need assistance, and they would get a maid servant, someone to aid the mother in her duties. And that was something that was understood and necessary to accomplish the duty successfully. Now that thought has left to a certain degree. It's still here for those, but we think about maids and butlers as something that more prestigious people can afford, right? But we'll continue. Hiring a Hebrew servant. Why am I saying all of this? For those out there who are into business, for those out there who are not afraid to talk about the subject, we need to be just and fair and upright in our dealings. There's too many stories and narratives of people going into business with no good contracts or no contracts at all, or just a handshake and a shalom. And then, next thing you know, you're on Facebook, YouTube, social media crying about all the things that the person did to you, but you didn't follow the proper protocol and steps that was needed, right, in order to engage in commerce with one another. Hiring a Hebrew servant. Deuteronomy 5:12. Hold on one second. Hold on. Hope I'm not going too fast. Make sure everything is on the up and up. Deuteronomy 5:12 says, and if your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, be sold unto thee and serve you 6 years. So we're going to see. Then in the 7th year, you shall let him go free from you. So this is somebody who may have been an eved, somebody who may have been a ama, where you're not necessarily getting paid. It's kind of like you're working for food, clothing, and shelter. Kind of like what happened to Yaakov, but I'm not going to jump ahead. And when you send him out free from you, you shall not let him go away empty-handed or empty. You shall furnish him liberally out of your flock and out of the floor and out of the winepress wherein the Most High has blessed you, you shall give unto him. So you got to give him some severance package. You can't just send him away, yo, thanks, good looking out, son, and then send him away broke. You have to give some sort of severance package. And you shall remember, hold on. Make sure you guys are seeing here. Are you seeing? Hold on. Oh, yeah, you're seeing. And you shall remember that you was a bondman in the land of Egypt, and the Most High your power redeemed you. Therefore, I command you this day, this thing. Okay, sorry. I just want to make sure. And what does it say? That I command you this day. We think that this is not important. We think business is not important. We don't got to talk about it. What's more important is all of these other things. Everything has equal importance when we are judged for bad dealings in business with one another. This is one of the reasons the Most High scattered Israel to the four corners of the earth, right? And 16, and it shall be if he say unto you, I will not go away, because he loved your house and loved you, and because he is well with you. Some people who just want to be an employee, I don't want to be on my own. The person wants to be an employee. You shall take an awl and thrust it through his ear onto the door, and he shall be your servant forever. And also your maidservant, you shall do likewise. So for the male and female servant who does not want to leave their master, that you give them opportunity. You're supposed to set them free at the 7th year. If they want to stay on, then they're just going to be eternally, with you until they pass. Deuteronomy 15:18. It shall not seem hard unto you when you send it away from you, for he hath been worth a double hired servant in serving these 6 years, and the Most High shall bless you in all you're doing. So in the case of Laban, Yaakov or Jacob is negotiating with him, and they have a set amount of time. And then later on, we see that Laban changes this time. Keeps moving he just keeps moving the goalposts. This is not right. This is not what we're supposed to do. If we make this type of agreement, there's a set time that the individual is supposed to be let free, if it be their will, and then be furnished liberally, because their assistance with you, them staying on with you, is what allowed you to increase in the way in which you did. But what happens is, even in the case, we do have a case, what happened in the case of Laban, he wanted more. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to let you go. So I'm gonna guide you a little bit. I want to keep you on because I want to keep on increasing. That's when covetousness comes in. I'll see how it plays in there. That's when covetousness comes in. That's when the person begins to be possessive of the individual who they feel is like their lucky charm. Okay. Hiring a Hebrew servant or hiring a Hebrew employee, right? Man or woman being sold to you, only obligated to serve 7 years. Again, this is a recap. Often in antiquity, people were sold to pay them. Were sold themselves to pay off debt. So back then it was, oh, you owe debt, you have to go work off this debt. And then like indentured servitude, there were many people from different countries who came to America as an indentured servant. They wanted the passage. They may have been poor in their country and they couldn't afford the trip. They couldn't afford the boat ride because they paid for the boat ride. And so someone else put forward the monies for the boat ride, and then they agreed upon how many years they would have to work to pay off that payment. And that's kind of what they're doing. That's what I'm listening to, what they're doing now to a lot of the women coming off the continent, is telling them that, oh, once you serve 2 years or 3 years to pay off the money that it costs to get you here, then I'll let you free. So somebody who may be indebted in antiquity, that would be the way that they would go. After serving 7 years for debt, they are to be sent away with in the 7th year, they're supposed to be sent away with a severance package. We spoke about that. And if he or she want to stay under your household as a Hebrew servant, they can forgo leaving after 6 years and commit to staying with the family for the remainder of their life. And we just read about that. Hebrew sold via indentured servant for debt. And so this is an example. This is one of the examples that people often go to for polygyny. I'm not going to talk about that right now because I've talked about it a lot of times in different spaces. But this particular verses right here that's going to be coming up after this point is talking about employment. But this one is mixed when it's talking about the Hebrew man. So now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them if you buy a Hebrew servant 6 years. And when it says buy, it just means, you know what I'm saying? Essentially, it's not like I own you like slavery was here to that certain degree. It's you buy the person's time. It's like people in the NFL. They're bought for a certain period of time. The people in the NBA and the professional sports, if you go into the music career, and they buy you, essentially contract you for 4 albums or 2 albums or 7 albums or 4 years of playing, whatever it is. If you buy a Hebrew servant 6 years, he shall serve you, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he were married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master have given him a wife, and she have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. Let me just say, that is what actually happened. When I began to read Torah and the history side by side, that's what actually happened. They perverted a lot of the laws because they put it as perpetual servitude. But if you went in, oftentimes unmarried as a man, they would hold on to your wife and children And that was the separation. But as you see, it's here. The wife and her children shall be her masters, and he shall go out by himself. And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him unto the judges. He shall also bring him to the door or unto the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with the awl, and he shall serve him forever. And there is when he makes the decision to stay, that's the perpetual servitude. This exchange of time for wages is replete without the text. One famous incident, and I said that before, is with Jacob and his uncle, if you can believe it or not. The uncle did him dirty, but we're going to continue. And if you don't know the story about Laban and Jacob, I'm going to read it briefly here. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to share. And it came to pass, Genesis 29:13, when Laban heard the tidings of Jacob, his sister's son, that he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. And he told Laban all these things. 14. And Laban said to him, surely you are my bone and my flesh. And he abode with him the space of a month. And Laban said unto Jacob, because you are my brother, shouldest thou therefore serve me for naught? Tell me, what shall your wages be? So Jacob was a what? Shakir. He was supposed to be a hireling. And Laban had, because he's like, why serve me for free? You're not, you're my family. I'm not going to do you like that. And Laban had two daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. 17, Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. 18, and Yaakov loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. In antiquity, this is a note, love alone was, girl, I love you, was not sufficient for the marriage of one's daughter. He was like, girl, I love you. You know what I'm saying? No, he was like, there are many steps that a man and the family had to take in order to take a woman to wife. In this case, Jacob's used his wages as a bride price in order to be eligible to marry Rachel. Laban agreed, and the business agreement was sealed. So you have an offer, a consideration, and an acceptance, right? This is business dealing. He had an offer, right? He first Laban is like, okay, what's going on? Jacob makes an offer, Laban accepts, and now they're in business. He didn't get any writing, but they verbally had an agreement. As time passed, the text reveals that Laban reneged on his portion of the contract. He beguiled Jacob, and after this, his week or 7 years was fulfilled, he gave him Leah and not Rachel. So essentially, he wanted to switch it up. We see what Torah says, and at this time, Laban is like, nah, I'm going to get a little more out of you. 29 and 20, and Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days, for the love he had to her. 21. And Jacob said unto Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled, that I may go in unto her. 22. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. 29 and 23. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her to him, and he went in unto her. 29 and 24. And Laban gave unto his daughter, see what I just said earlier? As soon as she got married, he gave unto his daughter Leah, Zilpah, his maid, and for a handmaiden. Okay, his amma. He gives her a handmaiden. And 25. And it came to pass that in the morning, behold, it was Leah, and he said to Laban, what is this thou hast done unto me? Did I not serve you or serve with you for Rachel? Wherefore have you beguiled me? So he had a desire. They made an agreement. And Laban later goes on and says, aha, there was this little part in the agreement that you didn't see. And this is why, it didn't go down the way you thought. So I'm going to read that. After which time Laban sought to extend the contractual agreement via coercion. These are all the things that very well exist today. People being lied to, people being promised bonuses that they never get, people being promised a certain, amount of compensation for their labor, and when the time comes to pay, it doesn't go that way. That is wickedness. Okay. And Laban said, 29, it must not be done so in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and we'll give thee this also for service, which you shall serve with me yet another 7 years. And Jacob did so, and fulfilled her week, and he gave him Rachel, his daughter, to wife also. And Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah. So he wasn't like, yo, your sister got a handmaid and whole that. Y'all good. Laban has these handmaidens, and he gives each daughter their own handmaiden. So he gives his handmaiden, or he gave Rachel, his daughter Bilhah, his handmaiden to be her maid. So as a hireling, Jacob was in a compromising situation. The agreed upon contract was breached, and his employer Laban still had within his possession his payment. And so this is how he was able to extort him, because he's expressing, he's like, I know you really want Rachel. So this is extortion now. And I'm gonna pump 7 more years out of you, right? Because I have what you really want. These are all of the things that people still do on to this day. So it is important to note what is happening in the narrative, see what caused the situation, and see how we don't become either Jacob or Laban. Okay. Let me drink some of my tea. And he heard the words of Laban's son saying, this is 31. So we jump onto, he's there, he does his 14. He's getting kind of antsy. He's going to end up doing 20 years, but let's continue. And he heard the words of Laban's son saying, Jacob hath taken away all of our fathers, all that was our fathers, and of that which was our fathers hath he gotten all his glory. So again, here comes jealousy, indifference, envy, covetousness. They see an increase. When he came there, he ain't have nothing. He was on the run from his brother Esau. He stays there. He's extorted, right? He's doing a number of things, and yet somebody looks on, which is Laban's sons, and now they're becoming envious and jealous of the possessions. Now, they say, and all that which was our father's hath he gotten all his glory. 31 and 2. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, because now this is information that's passing. Oh, she was cool before. He was cool before. You notice ever since they got that job, boo, 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 as they like to say, you notice how they change. Oh, you see that gold chain they have on. You see those new shoes. You see that new car. You see that new business they have. These are all the things that causes the downfall of a people. We see it happening and playing out in this story. And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban. So he was perceptive. He was intuitive. He was like, something right here. You was doing me bad, but now you mad at me, right? And beheld, it was not toward him as before, because apparently the sons had to be getting into his ear, okay? And the Most High said unto Jacob, return unto the land of your fathers and to the kindred, and I'll be with you. Because, the streets is hot. It's getting kind of sticky. So Jacob has to dip out at this point. Let's not lose sight. We're talking about business. We're talking about commerce. We're talking about basic Bible study for spiritual growth. Sorry, my voice. 31 and 4. And Jacob sent and called Rachel and led to the field unto his flock, because flock was money. It was currency. Okay. And said unto them, I see your father's countenance, that is not toward me as before, but the most of my fathers have been with me. And you know that with all my power, I have served your father. So he was a good employee. You got to know, you know what I'm saying? And now they don't want to give you what's owed to you. And your father have deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. You came up for that promotion. They didn't give it to you, but they still want you to show up every day. But the Most High suffered him not to hurt me. 31 and 41. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for the two. Oh, no, I jumped a bit. So I'm like, what in the world? I jumped a bit. This is now when Laban and Jacob is having a discussion. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I served thee 14 years for the 2 daughters and 6 years for your cattle, and you have changed my wages 10 times. And except the Most High, my father, the power of Abraham and the fear of Yitzchak had been with me, surely you would have sent me away now empty, which we know, according to Torah that we just read, was unrighteous. And but Jacob is aware that Laban wasn't trying to adhere to Torah, and that he would have sent him away with no severance if he didn't do the whole speckle and spotted thing. He says, the Most I have seen my affliction and the labors of my hands, and rebuke thee yesternight. Okay, so let's go. So that was the hireling situation of Jacob, and what went down, and what's not supposed to be going down as we deal one to another. Wet nurse. Within the Torah, we also see, and I already spoke about this, so I'm not going to read the fullness of it. We already see Moses' mother being paid for wages to nurse young Moses. And we see that in Exodus 2 and 4 through 2 and 9. And I'll read 2 and 9. They found him. Miriam says she's going to go get someone. And 2 and 9 says, and Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it, which ultimately was Moshe's mother. When I looked up some information on wet nurse, or the yanak, the wet nurse, in antiquity, she was highly, you couldn't lay with or have sexual relations with a wet nurse or a woman who was lactating. It was seen as something that was taboo. That's not the case in these days, but there's something that was happening in antiquity that they understood that this position, even though the child is no longer in the womb, it was still a position that needed to be guarded so that the child can be nourished to be able to sustain themselves when they get past that phase, when they're weaned. So that was a situation of a wet nurse. You should not defraud your neighbor. Again, there's a lot of scamming going on in the wider community, as well as I see in the Hebrew community. There's a lot of talk of scamming going on and people not doing what they say they're supposed to do and giving bad name and all kind of madness. Okay, you should not defraud your neighbor. This is against Torah. So for those who think that, A, you don't have to have commerce and exchange with each other. If you don't, then you don't really have a nation. And secondly, if you don't understand that this is actual law, then you're not going to be able to build. You should not defraud your neighbor. Leviticus 19 and 13. You shall not defraud your neighbor, neither rob the wages of him that is hired, shall not abide with you all night until the morning. So the day laborer, right? You're supposed to pay the person daily, especially in this society. The person will be broke. They just got a job. There's some jobs that don't pay you for 2 weeks. They expect you to show up for 2 weeks, have the clothing they ask, required everything, food, lunch money, and you're broke. You don't have any money. And they're not paying you. You're putting in 2 weeks time and you're not getting paid sometimes in 2 weeks, sometimes in a month. Sometimes people are only getting paid once a month. A shock is the word. It means, this word defraud, it means to press upon. That is oppress, defraud, violate, overflow, get deceitfully. So don't oppress your neighbor. Don't hold what you know he needs. There's another law that says if they owe you something and you know that's the only garment that they have, then don't keep their cloak overnight because you know they need it to sleep. So there's some compassion in business, okay? Robbery. Leviticus 19:13. You shall not defraud your neighbor, neither rob him. The wages of him that is hired shall not abide with you all night. Gazelle is another word to pluck off, specifically to flay or strip or rob. Okay, so defraud and rob. Holding a hireling's wages overnight is robbery. The scripture says it. If the agreement is for day labor, because often such a person is disadvantaged in a disadvantaged situation and requires daily maintenance to get by. And I actually spelled by wrong. I have to fix that. I spelled by instead of by. But some may say, oh, no, that's how they do it here. If you have a business, if you're doing something, you're employing somebody at that capacity, then at the end of the day, you need to pay them. Prophetic warnings, again, for those who may think like this doesn't have anything to do with it, and yeah, I beg to differ. The book of Jeremiah also issues a warning to the employer who uses the neighbor's service without payment. As an employee, one has to assess who they're working for. If the person has a reputation of non-payment or ill treatment, then they may not want to be the person to seek employment from. Jeremiah 22 and 13. Woe to him that buildeth his house by unrighteousness, and his chambers by wrong, useth his neighbor's service without wages, and giveth him not for his work. Now, who is Jeremiah? And who is Jeremiah speaking to? And why is Jeremiah chastising business owners, people who are engaging in commerce or agriculture, or whatever their business is? Why is Jeremiah chastising them for holding your neighbor's wages with after you have received their service? Another prophetic warning. It's not a small matter. Malachi 3 and 5. And I will come near to you to judgment, and I'll be a swift witness against the sorcerers, We're going to talk about that another time. Against adulterers, against false swearers, and against those that oppress, there goes the word again, the hireling in his wages. It's not just any old way that you oppress him, in his wages, the widow and the fatherless, and that turn aside the stranger from his right. They have that in italics. So basically it says, turn aside the stranger. And fear not me, the Most High of hosts. So this is the prophet Malachi speaking, the Most High speaking through the prophet Malachi to say, this is a problem. Sorcerers, adulterers, false swearers, those who oppress the hireling, that will be the employers, the widow, the father, and those who oppress the widow, the fatherless, and turn aside from those who need help. Power struggle. Let me go ahead and check on everybody, make sure everybody is still good. I think I'm almost done. So I'll check on everybody in a minute. Power struggle. Once again, the employer and employee situation has many laws of protection against abuse of power and position. Job compares his time on earth as that of a hireling, one who exchanges their time for a reward. Job goes on to say hirelings look forward to their reward. They depend on these wages to again sustain themselves and families. Hirelings build up someone else's business, dreams, or ambitions. They participate in exchange for compensation, and it is the hirer's or the employer's responsibility to pay once the agreed upon work is completed. Job 7:1. Is there not an appointed time to man upon earth? Are not his days also like the days of a hireling? As a servant earnestly desireth the shadow, and as a hireling looketh for the reward of his work. The Hebrew hustle. The Hebrew hustle. Again, like I said, I've been in business many times. When, for instance, you may be promoting something in this world of marketing and all of these things you promote and people express interest, as a rule of thumb, don't sell what you don't have. People can express interest, and when it becomes available, then you are able to get the monies to send it out. But if you're in the working phase and process and you're just gathering data and information and seeing who may be interested, to accept monies of people without a product ultimately will backfire, right? But there's some people who may know they don't have the product and still go out there in hopes that they're going to receive the monies from the people and then ultimately get the product to give to the people. As it relates to employment, servitude, and work allowances, there are numerous laws governing what can and cannot be done to your kinsmen. These laws are important to know, learn, and practice. Obedience to them contribute to our righteousness, or violation of them contribute to our wickedness as a nation. So go ahead and read Leviticus 25:38 through 44. We see you should not compel him to serve as a bondman. That's if your brother who dwells by you, he get poor. You know what I'm saying? Somebody falls, or like we say, hard times, and he's sold onto you, you can't press them hard. Also, you should not rule over your brother with rigor. Because that's another reason I hear oftentimes given why people don't want to work with people that look like them, is because the thought of who made you God and king over me? That's number one. And B, the thought of working you. Ever heard it like a Hebrew slave? There's always this resistance to be worked without compensation. Anytime you sign on to a job, this resistance to be worked without compensation. Hold on. Anytime you sign on to a job, you see the benefits package, what you expect to receive. If you are Torah mandated, there are employee benefits that we're seeing and reading thus far that needs to be there. Mandated by Torah, no demand for work can be made of the employer on the employees. Like, for instance, on a Shabbat, that was one of the major issues. It kept coming up, is that Israel was servants, slaves in Egypt, and were not given respect and were worked with rigor, right? And when you look at when I took the time to look at some years ago, the Egyptian calendar. It says that the Egyptian had a 10-day work week at one point. Their work week was not a 7-day work week. Their work week was a 10-day work week. And so they would work 8 days and get the last 2 days of the week supposedly off. Okay. So I found that very interesting that their calendar was different. And so when we come to Exodus 20:8, and it keeps saying, remember the Shabbat, remember the Shabbat. At that space and time, another thing to consider is that the children of Israel was coming out of a space where the calendar was different. And so they were working for 8 days. And here comes a totally new, different calendar system that said you work for 6 days and the 7th, and you rest for 1. And so we see mandatory days off, which is the 7th day, Shabbat. If you're an employer, regardless of what's going on in the community, because that's a day for many people where a lot of things, the temptation for people to work on that day is great, especially in diaspora, because that's when many people go out and do their shopping. That's when many people are moving around, because now the work week here, just like in Egypt, the work week was work 8 days and rest 2. Here, the work week is work 5 days and rest 2. Okay. So people work Monday through Friday, and then Saturday is their day, and then Sunday they either rest or they go to church or wherever it is that they go. So we see a different calendar. So our calendar, day of rest, happens to rest on a time where people want to go out and spend their money. There's many things you have to be firm in your conviction, because I can't count the amount of times that people have come to me and said, hey, Yamuna, man, if only you could come to this fair, if only you can do that. I'm like, nah, dude, I don't move on Shabbat. I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? As a matter of fact, there was one even today. And they've told me countless times, oh, there's so much that goes on. And you have to be, some people be like, oh, why would you do that? This is a part of saying that you adhere to the law, statutes, and judgments of the Creator. There are things that in this diaspora, because we are not necessarily setting the laws here, that you are going to be exposed to, but you have to make choices and not excuses. Torah mandated employee benefits. Again, I spoke about that. The high holy days are also non-negotiable. That's another conversation as it relates to the high holy days here in our diaspora. But when we see our return to the land, these are days that are mandatory days off. Okay, in addition to the 7th day Shabbat, you have high holy days all throughout the year, from the first month to the 7th. That would be Torah mandated employee benefits. I think this is lastly here. Lastly, we have Ezekiel 22 and 29 through 31. It says, the people of the land have used oppression and exercised robbery, and have vexed the poor and needy. Yea, they have oppressed the stranger wrongfully. Can you almost guess in what fashion or form? And I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap. Remember what Adam was to do? He was to work and to what? Keep it. And one of the definitions for keep was shamar, and shamar was to be a hedge. I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. Ezekiel 22:31. Therefore, I have poured out mine indignation upon them, and have consumed them with the fire of my wrath. Their own way have I recompensed upon their heads, saith the Most High. Now, if through the prophet Ezekiel, the Most High is saying that through oppression and robbery and vexing of the poor and needy is one of the reasons that indignation came upon the land, how important is business? How important is our business dealings? It's just business, right? Let me see here. Let me stop sharing my screen. How important is business? I turned off the light because it was in my eye. How important is business? How important is business dealings? I would say very important. It's very important, but I don't hear much talk around the subject addressing the subject, except for when somebody, there's not a lot of preparation around this space. We have been not only injured in this space before this point, if many people came through the church, they were injured again because it was taught in a lopsided type of manner where the conversation is just give the church the tithes and offerings and they'll deal with it. And so the people felt robbed and oppressed again. That's all I have for tonight. Hopefully that was beneficial to someone somewhere. Like I said, it's not the most tantalizing subject matter, but it is needed. And we need to understand entrepreneurship. We need to understand, and I didn't even go into the blessings because it would have been really long, but read the blessings again in the book of Deuteronomy. Take a look at what it says. It's talking about economics, not just money. I'm talking about exchange, the positivity of your storehouse being full. That's economics. Talking about sowing and reaping, that's economics. The blessed shall be the fruit of your womb. Blessed shall be the fruit of your animal's womb. That means your produce is increasing. That means as your produce increase, as your cattle increase, then your wealth increase. And you're able to exchange and you're able to barter and you're able to maneuver because you have access to resources. Poverty is part of the curse because poverty is speaking about lack, and this lack comes through disobedience. And so if we don't know that the very things that we're ignoring and refusing to speak to as a wider community are the reasons why we're still in the situation, because you need good relations in order to build wealth. They say, okay, one more thing and I'll let you go. How many times does the dollar circulate in the melanated community? Right? I think it's 1 point something times. So energetic wise, we have been depleted, right? How many times does the dollar, yeah, how many times does the dollar circulate in the Black community, so-called Black community? Okay, here it says that Asians keep a dollar in their community 120 times longer than African Americans. I Asians keep a dollar in their community 120. Why? What does that mean, keep a dollar in your community? That means that you have trusted businesses in your community and entrepreneurs and produce in your community that you can go from, like Black Wall Street. This is how it was able to build wealth, because you have your lawyer, you have your doctor, you have your scientist, you have your teacher, you have your dry cleaner, you have, all of the things you need to run a self-sustaining community. That means when you trade or barter with external outside, when it comes in, you're going to get it. You're going to go to the produce guy. The produce guy is going to get it. He's going to go. All of them is within the community. He's going to go to the dry cleaner. The dry cleaner is going to get it. He's going to go to pay his car. The car is going to get it. And this is how it circulates before it goes out. Because the thought is everything that I need is here. Okay. When everything that we need is not here, or when the system is broken, then you cannot build because it's not here. Because there's no trust. So before you could talk about money, you have to look at commerce and our communication. Our communication is broken. I've said that before many times. Our interactions are broken. And we to one another are disposable, dispensable. And I don't need to listen to you, and I don't want to hear what you have to say. And so we can easily discard one another because we don't see the true value in one another. And that's really what it boils down to. A lack of value within self, and by extension, a lack of value within your neighbor. So let me know how that's going to work out. It's not just business, it's about relationships. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, for those who are watching and for those who will watch. May we continue to do the difficult work, where we continue to do the work that's actually going to yield the fruit, where we continue to till the soil and guard our minds, and weed out the things that have no place and no bearing. So with that said, Everybody have a blessed day, and we'll talk soon. And Esther, how was your jerk chicken? Esther, how was your jerk chicken? Esther said she went to go pick up some jerk chicken. All right. All righty then.